Today's about the psychology of the mainstream. And what better individuals to use as an example than two online globe representatives. First up, we've got a character known as Mr. Sensible, which is bizarre considering he defends things online that are scientifically impossible and yet has the cheek to call himself Mr. Sensible. But of course, when we dig a little bit deeper like I'm gonna, it becomes quite obvious Mr. Sensible doesn't have a Scooby-Doo clue about how his own mind works or even his own words and what he stands by. Literally, Scooby-Doo is less confused than this character. So let me set the scene. He's having a bit of a rant here with an experience of someone who got a flu bug at work a few weeks back. And as a result, in his own words and message, which of course are incredibly revealing, Mr. Sensible here shows how he propagandized, deluded and bewildered he is by the fact that he makes instant attachments based on one person's behavior and then instantly starts grouping individuals all together based on one person's behavior. Why? Because he's fallen for the propaganda, the traps, the pitfalls that the news and the mainstream media push, and that is divide. To get the ego involved, and as a result you cannot discern. This own man's own words are going to make a mockery of himself and show how illogical this man actually is. He claims to be sensible and logical, but he's actually deluded and lost in a sea of delusions and mainstream propaganda, and is a perfect mainstream puppet to push this nonsense that is going on at the moment. Anyway, let's get to the story, or Mr. Sensible's message, and then we're going to break it down using his own words. Dear, oh dear. So Mr. Sensible says, so who is upset and annoyed and really angry? That'll be me. Today I was sat at work opposite a guy who didn't look well and was getting worse. He even put his coat on and had the shivers. The three of us said to him more than once, go downstairs and get a test. He kept saying no, maybe, perhaps. It ended up with a girl shouting at him, so he did. He tested positive, for fuck's sake. He actually handed the test to someone and said, look, I tested positive. So now she is worried sick as well, and he was sent home. Well, that's not good, I hear you say. It's worse. He apparently has been feeling unwell for 2 or 3 days and didn't test himself. He lives with his girlfriend and she is unwell and she did test herself and she was positive. What kind of idiot goes to work feeling unwell when they're living with someone who's positive for the flu? I am clinically vulnerable. This is Mr. Sensible saying this. Sally, which I presume is his wife, is borderline vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. My in-laws who both live with us are both extremely vulnerable. My middle daughter works in a care home for the elderly, all extremely vulnerable. Oh, and tonight, Sally and I, the three girls, 3 partners, were going out for a nice Christmas treat, steak dinners at the local pub, and now it will just be the 7 of them. I'm having to isolate myself from everyone else in the house for a few days from my office to see if anything else develops. I just tested negative, but it's only been 12 hours. So I am pissed with those who don't get the V, those who don't social distance, etc. And with this idiot from work, you bet your arse if he wants to go clubbing, blah, blah, blah. So he's just having a rant. But notice how Mr. So-called Sensible, off the back of this one individual, now expects everyone else to take part in a medical procedure. How ignorant of you. And I get it if you're a vulnerable health. I get it. You need to look after yourself, have a good diet. That's the most important shield you can have. Not relying on drugs, mate. And certainly not being propagandized, your mind being propagandized. Clearly an overreaction fueled by the fact your ego runs wild within your head, my friend. Where you've just suddenly attached a whole group of people who have totally different reasons for maybe not wanting to participate in that medical procedure. You've attached all of those individuals, many super responsible people, you've attached them to one irresponsible idiot. You're not very sensible. That's not very logical. I get it if you're vulnerable. But the problem is, I've seen other messages, Captain Sensible, Mr. Sensible. You don't even back your own words, as we're about to see. I wouldn't mind if you lived really healthily, rather than blamed others for your health, particularly as you're vulnerable, as you put it. But as we're about to see, you're a hypocrite, deluded. You don't even understand your own mind. Bear with me. So I'm going through some of this man's messages, this man who claims to be sensible. And here he is going on about eating pork pies. Not exactly healthy food, particularly if you're vulnerable, fella. We'll scroll down a bit more. This just makes it really, really bad for you. So-called Mr. Sensible, giving the game away by showing how propagandized you were by grouping everyone together, a massive group of people off the back of one irresponsible person. You claim to be sensible, but clearly you've been propagandized. But what makes it even worse is when we come down here and look at the shit you're eating, fella. You're going about you're vulnerable. Look, that is crap food, mate. If you're going on about your health, you want to build the shield from within, mate. Not rely on fucking drugs. I mean, you call yourself sensible. You eat pork pies and crap. Look at the very next message now. It's in fucking McDonald's. With this character. A man who lies daily. Look. What did you eat? Look what he's eaten. And this man has the cheek to go on about others, about them affecting his health, well, he doesn't even take any care of his own health himself. The man's a hypocrite. He goes on that he's vulnerable and that he's sensible, but yet he eats pork pies, breakfasts, some of the most toxic food out there. You might, mate, want to actually try and act sensible. Maybe eat properly. Maybe go to the gym. Put a bit of colour in them cheeks. You're a hypocrite, mate. You don't even know how your own mind works. Clearly, you are affected by the propaganda and controlled by the media. You claim to be sensible, but your own actions and words show you to be a stupid, irresponsible, dumb hypocrite. We know that anyway. You represent the globe online, which is scientifically impossible. Dear, oh dear. And these are the people that represent the globe online. They don't even understand their own minds. And the propaganda poisons the minds of these people. They are deluded. And this is why I don't entertain them. Only rarely for educational purposes. Sad. And then you come to this clown, Flirspective, supposedly giving a look at what flat earthers are about. Yet this man was an absolute clown and a terrible representative of the truth. Made up all sorts of silly stories, backed all sorts of delusions, when all he needed to do was stand by the things that were simply true. It's obvious just based on his work back in the day that he was at it, either on task or deluded or up to no good. Of course, all these years later, his actions speak louder than anything I could ever say. But you've only got to come down. We know the man defends something that's scientifically impossible, i.e. the globe. We know these people have nothing to offer other than addictions to materialism. And of course, as we saw with so-called Mr. Sensible, they suffer with delusions. Some are at it, some are just bewildered and deluded. This man, as we're about to see, if we're supposedly to join his channel, Adopt a Flurf, Flat Buster, Flat Stomper, Flat Destroyer for $22.99. What'd you get? Recurring payment, exclusive members only videos from someone who stands by something that's scientifically impossible. Then Flat Earth Annihilator, £89.99 a month. What do you get? No demonstrable science. You get to speak to someone who stands by something that's scientifically impossible, made an absolute clown of themselves when they tried to represent the truth, and they didn't. They represented delusions, and yet they were expected to believe that they are a representation of the truth. This man was a moron back in the day who just embarrassed himself and anyone he associated with. And yet he wants 90 quid a month from people to keep this man's delusions, which essentially he's a materialistic con man. The globe's impossible. We've seen these people suffer from mental issues, whether it be through bewilderment or they're ruled by the coin, as in this man's case. It was obvious this was always about the coin to this individual. When he realised it wasn't on offer on the other side, he should have realised that in the first place, going against the mainstream narrative, but he's too stupid. When he realised that, he went turncoat. He was never convincing. It's up to you whether you believe he was ever genuinely in on this, but of course his actions stink. And the fact the man wants £90 a month to have virtual video collaborations with someone who could send you to sleep. Maybe if you're struggling with sleep, this is your boy. But I'm sure there's plenty of honest sleep experts out there who can resolve your issues. But this is your Globe representatives. Globe's impossible. I stand by the things that are simply true, don't cost a penny. These people class themselves as sensible, but they're deluded. They claim to offer a perspective from someone like myself, when clearly they were never representatives of the truth in any shape or form. They were clearly only about the coin, and you've only got to look at Matey's channel. His own words, his own actions highlight that. Dear, oh dear.